Hello everybody. Today I've got another in-depth airsoft review for you. It's another revolver, which is I kind of feel like is my speciality a little bit, even though I've only probably reviewed like 4 or 5. They really interest me, and there aren't a whole lot of other people making airsoft revolver videos out there, especially not Tanakas. So yeah, it's something that definitely interests me, and hopefully you find these interesting as well. Today I'm going to be looking at the Tanaka Smith & Wesson Model 36 Ladysmith. The label covers this label up a little bit, but this is the Tanaka label that they put on. It looks like it's been written in pen, like written on like an old revolver would be. As you can see, it's the ABS model with a steel finish, and as you can see from this label, which has been inconsiderately placed over the nice little label there, it costs £199 and it's from Wolf Armories, which I have had good experiences with, even though their website is very dated. It's not a representation of their service, and they're a good shop to use. I got this one while it was on sale. They had a 10% sale on everything or something like that, so I got it for a little bit cheaper. First thing I want to talk about with the box is that it's nicely presented. You've got an interesting sort of finish on it, and it does look just like an old Smith & Wesson revolver box, with the exception of a few of the Airsoft Japanese marks. And that mark there, I believe, is their importer, how they get them from Japan to here. Another thing about this box is quite how tiny it is. As you can see, I can just hold it in my hand like that. Let me grab a gun. There you go. You can see how small this box is, and that's because we are talking about a very tiny revolver. So let's get on with that. We've got proper Smith & Wesson markings on here. Now, these newer Tanaka revolvers have completely realistic markings, so I'll show you that soon. I believe it's an actual agreement with Smith & Wesson, so they are sort of legal trades, although I'm not absolutely sure about that, but I believe that they do have an agreement now. A little bit of information in Japanese. We've got our generic Model 36 manual. All of them are essentially the same. They make quite a lot of different models based on the J-frame, so the Model 60, the Model 36, the Model 442, the Model 642... to name a few. There's the Model 360 Japanese police revolver, loads of them built on J-frame. That's one thing I do love about Tanaka. They will make lots of variants that are very similar but slightly different. And as you can see here, they've got a cutout for a longer barrel, so they do make a few different variations of the Model 36. Right, so get the gun out. Actually, I'll just have a look in the manual quickly. You can see it's got a labelled parts diagram, how to gas it, how to use it, but it's a revolver, so it's all pretty simple. What is very useful though is the exploded view here, in case you ever take it apart. We've got our usual Tanaka assortment of parts, so we've got a little O-ring and gas extension valve for filling it, which I don't actually use. I'll show you that later. Little bag of quality BBs. You've got a plug which will be in the end of the gun for safety, and we've got our little speed loader, which I'm sure nobody ever uses. It's just a little manual kind of speed loader. You put the BBs in here, push it forward, and it would push them into the cylinder. And then we've got our polystyrene base. Like I said, it's got all these cutouts, so you've got room for a gun with a rubber grip, for a grip safety, for a enclosed hammer, generic box that would fit loads of different J-frames. Right, so here is the gun. As I said, it is a Model 36 Ladysmith. It is in steel finish, which you can see immediately looks really good, especially if I get it angled just right into the light there. Almost mirror-like finish. I don't know if you'll be able to see it reflective. There you go. And once again, like I said, with the box, you'll be able to see quite how small this gun is compared to my hands. Now, this isn't the first time I've reviewed a Smith & Wesson J-frame. I had a review a few years ago of the Model 642? No, Model 442, because it was the black version rather than the stainless. And that was an enclosed hammer, double action only gun. Unfortunately, it was made out of regular ABS, and I quite quickly got sick of the feel of the plain plastic, so I sold it. However, this one is plain ABS, but with the special coating. So I'll give you a few close-up views of that. Now, I haven't cleaned it particularly well for this review, which I probably should have done, but you can still see that it's finished very nicely and with very few imperfections. It seems that every time Tanaka make one of these guns, or make a new variation with a special finish, the finish does get better. and it's just a little bit dirty there, but if I wipe it off you'll see that overall the finish is very good, with very little pitting or anything like that, which some of the older guns used to have, and very little warping. You used to see in the plastic a little bit of warping going on, but this finish is indeed very good. Now, I mentioned earlier that all the markings are entirely realistic. As a comparison, if I grab an older, I'd say this was probably made in the early 2000s, so maybe 10 years old or something like that. You can see that this gun, which is a Model 19 steel finish, says made in Japan by says Smith & Wesson with Tanaka below it, which isn't a huge deal because you've still got the authentic Tanaka logos here. But we do have on this one, made in USA, Smith & Wesson, Springfield, Massachusetts, so entirely realistic. Which is a very nice change from that, actually, for people that, you know, appreciate those details. And we've got the Smith & Wesson logo here. Now, sometimes when they put these special coatings on, the depth of the markings kind of disappears a little bit, and they can look a little bit shallow and almost like they're sort of drawn on rather than engraved. But we have got decent depth here, and it does look pretty good. While we're talking about the finish, you might have noticed that rather than a traditional gun blue finish, the steel finish is more of a black. Perhaps there's a hint of blue to it, but that's probably more it reflecting off the sky through the window. So anyone who's used to real revolvers might be expecting more of an actual gun blue. But Tanaka don't do that, or at least they haven't perfected how to do that yet, so it's much more of a shiny black, like you see with the Model 19 here. As on any brand new Tanaka with this kind of finish, the hammer and trigger are just a plain kind of machined black finish. They're not shiny, or, well, they're a little bit shiny, but they're not quite the same finish as the rest of the gun. Something that I personally quite like to do is to get rid of that pure black. This one has worn down a little bit with a lot of use, but you can see that it has a slightly different finish on the trigger and hammer, which is something that I like to do. Haven't touched this one yet. This one's completely stock at the moment. The cylinder is also a slightly different finish to the rest of the gun. It's just a glossy black. It doesn't quite match the steel finish, but I guess again that's not something they've quite perfected yet. Now, for anyone that isn't familiar with Tanaka revolvers, I'll quickly go over which materials are used in which parts. So the main body, although very impressively metallic looking, is indeed ABS plastic, so that's the whole frame. The barrel is also plastic, looks just as good as the body. There are lots of metal parts though, for reinforcement, such as the entire sort of subframe inside the plastic. The trigger and hammer are of course metal, the cylinder is metal, which gives the gun a whole lot of weight, something that's definitely missing on the Marushin guns, which have plastic cylinders. You can really feel the difference here. And all of the small details are metal as well, like the cylinder release latch there. The crane is also, the yoke or crane, whichever one you want to call it, is indeed metal and is finished the same as the rest of the gun, which is very nice. And the mock ejector here, which doesn't eject anything because Tanaka guns do not use shells. Flipping it over, one thing that again is different to the Marushin guns, we've got a nice big metal side plate. Marushin ones, at least the ones I've used, have all been plastic, and it adds a lot of rigidity. These guns really don't have any flex to them, and that big metal side plate is part of that. Now, one nice thing that defines this as a Ladysmith is indeed that white Ladysmith mark. Now, when I was looking at pictures of this, I wasn't sure whether it would be a little bit garish having that white font on there, but actually it complements the gloss sort of blued finish nicely, and not sure why my hands are shaking so much. I'm trying to hold it still. There we go. Ladysmith looks very good. Hopefully you can see on my hand here quite how small these guns are. If you're not familiar with the J-frame, they are the smallest guns from Smith & Wesson. This is the K-frame, which is kind of a mid-size. They don't actually make K-frames anymore. They're now L-frames, which are a bit larger, but you can see they're considerably smaller, again, compared to a palm. and here it is compared to a Cybergun VFC FNX 45. See how small it is there? And also my VFC Glock 42, which I still absolutely love. That's a great handgun there. Little taste of an old school concealed carry gun compared to a modern one. Nice little pair of guns. Right, so what else can we talk about here? The grips, you might have noticed, are quite nice looking. Most Tanakas out of the box come with kind of not great looking fake wood grips. A lot of guns like this do. These ones are real wood, however, and they fit very nicely. Obviously they're made by Tanaka, so you'd expect them to fit well. Yeah, the gap between the frame and the grips is pretty much non-existent. They fit very well. Now these grips are absolutely tiny. They cover the minimal amount that you could really get away with, as in they have a reveal, they have a exposed, that's what I'm trying to say. They've got an exposed back strap and front strap, so they're kind of tricky to get a hold of. Something that you'll find yourself doing a lot with this style of grip is holding the gun a little too high, because there's nothing to fill this gap. If we have a look at my Pachmeyer grips on here, the gap here is filled. It forces your hand down a little more, and that's, although it's a slightly lower hold on the gun, so the bore axis is higher, that makes more sense because your finger is more in line with the trigger. If you hold a J-frame with these kind of grips as high as you can, which is the natural thing to do to get a good grip, you'll find that you're actually holding it far too high to get a good grip on the trigger. And my hands actually interface a little bit with the cylinder holding it that high, so you kind of have to make an attempt to hold it a little lower. Or another alternative is to get one of the, I'm trying to think of what they're called, T-grips. It's a little metal adapter that sits in there to fill that gap. I quite like the look of this as it is, but in terms of practicality, although it's allows for the maximum concealability factor, they aren't actually the most suitable guns for grips for shooting. So yeah, you kind of find yourself having to adjust to hold this gun correctly. Right, so this is a gas revolver, of course, being a Tanaka. The shells are fixed in here. It uses the Pegasus system, so you've got a fixed inner cylinder and a moving outer cylinder. It's a bit confusing if you don't know exactly how they work, but I've tried to explain it in other videos. So it's got a nice tight lockup, as you'd expect from a Tanaka. A lot of what I'm going to say here is typical of all Tanakas. They are very well built guns. The action is very precise, so you can hear there. Good lockup. I've never experienced cocking it and it not locking up, as in the cylinder stop always stops the cylinder just where it's meant to. And the yoke is quite nice and smooth, so it's not as stiff as some other revolvers can be. You can see the nice mirrored finish there on the steel finish. Right, so one of the quirkier things about the Tanaka system, which holds the gas in the cylinder rather than in the grip, it's very good because it lets you use real grips. So you could put any kind of real steel Smith & Wesson J-frame grips you like on here. I like these how they are, so I'll be keeping them. But one thing that is interesting about this system is that you've obviously got to find a way of putting gas from a big bottle like this somehow into that cylinder. And yeah, if you know your Tanakas, you're going to know how you do this, but just for anyone else, they come with this extension nozzle, so I'll just break it out of the packaging here. The idea is that you will line up the hole in the sort of cylinder face there, and those fake shells, with the valve. As you can see there, you'd line it up. You would put your little inlet extension there, and then you try and hold that in place while you're trying to gas it. Every time I've tried to do that, you get gas everywhere. You can't be guaranteed that you're getting a good fill. And with between the bottle moving around and this, I do worry about scratching the gun up, because you really don't want to be scraping the finish up with this. So something that I do, as long as you can be, and I recommend you do this as long as you're reasonably careful with a screwdriver, is undo the first frame screw here. And I am scared I'm going to scratch something up while I'm looking through the camera. but I think we're all right. So you just undo that. There we go, it's come out. Now don't worry, nothing will fall apart because you've still got another 2 screws here. And that allows you to remove the yoke and the cylinder as one unit. There you go, just ease it off, try not to scratch up any of this. And there we go. So this is what I do when I'm filling up my guns personally. Get the cylinder off. You know that you're not going to be scratching anything up. And you can just fill it up like that. Now some people probably criticise my use of power-up gas, which is very, very powerful indeed. And a lot of people think that it may break one of these revolvers, which is something I used to think. But after years of using that gas in these kind of revolvers, I'm fairly confident that these can handle it. And of course the benefit of using a gas like that is maximising power from that very small barrel. The entire mechanism is very tiny, the mainspring isn't particularly strong, certainly not compared to some of the larger guns, and it's also not adjustable. Some of the larger ones, like this, have a flat spring that goes from here in the frame up to the hammer, and you can actually tighten a tensioning screw that allows you to squeeze out a little bit more power out of these. The J-frames are different. They have a compression spring in here, which you can actually hear, which is something that... not sure if you can hear that. Have a listen. One of the only things that I would say I don't like about this gun is indeed that compression spring, because it slightly rubs against the inside of the grips and you can actually hear it. Just a slight kind of scraping. Maybe it's just a slight alignment issue and I need to take it out and turn it around a little bit or something. But yeah, you don't get any adjustability with the power, and these aren't particularly powerful guns as they are. I mean, I don't have a chronograph, as I always say. It's not worth me buying one of those really for the amount of shooting I actually do. But I'd estimate between 150 and 200 feet per second, most likely. It's possible though, with a powerful gas like this, it could be pushing out over 200. It certainly doesn't sound like it though. I'll give you a little, a few shots to hear the sound. Luckily it sounds quite different when there are BBs going through it, but without the BBs, it sounds pretty sort of mousy and wimpy. There you go, you can hear that high-pitched pop from that very short barrel. So yeah, quite a funny little noise. Do a few shots in double action, which for a Tanaka you'd expect to be very smooth, and indeed it is. But yeah, you do get quite a high-pitched pop. Now what I'll probably do now, yeah, here we've got some BBs. I'll load some BBs in, and you can hear what it sounds like with the BBs going through, because I believe the sound is a little bit different. At least last time I shot it, it did sound different. So what we're going to do for that, we're going to open the cylinder, and it's simply a case of putting them in the front. Now there is an internal magazine which will hold 5 shots, which gives you a maximum of 10 shots here. So what I'll do, just to demonstrate that, is you can fill up that internal magazine by forcing BBs into this, the opening to the magazine, which happens to be that chamber here. You'll be able to see it. I believe that was 5. Yep. And then you simply fill the other ones up by hand, which would actually give you 9 shots, I suppose, if you've got 4 here and 5 in the magazine. I'm not sure. I haven't actually tested this one yet, so let's do that. Right, so we've got the maximum load. I'll try and force another BB in that magazine just to see. Yeah, that's as much as I'm going to get in there. Alright, let's just see what it sounds like. Hopefully shooting at something soft here. Right. And it's really just as high pitched, so I was wrong there. I was thinking it was a little bit deeper with the BBs in, but no, it sounds the same really. And looks like we're out. Now something that you obviously make gains over a gas blowback pistol with is that there's very little gas being used to do anything here. All it's doing is forcing that BB out of the barrel. So you'll generally get quite a few shots out of a fill. Saying that, it seems like I'm running low here. By the way, when I filled it up earlier, I was sort of demonstrating. I didn't give it an actual fill. So with a proper fill, you'd expect more shots than that. Probably 30, 40, maybe even 50 shots. But anyway, this isn't the kind of gun that you're going to shoot a huge amount. For people that might want to use it though as like a little concealable backup gun for skirmishing, it does have a fixed top-up unit. Can't see it in there, but yeah, despite the very short barrel, you could probably get shots out to about 20 meters. That's how long my garden is. And using these either 0.25s or 0.3 BBs, which might sound rather heavy for this kind of gun, they do fly reasonably straight. I think over time Tanaka have got better and better with their consistency on their guns. My Model 19 is probably worse in terms of performance, despite the adjustable hop-up, just because of the consistency of it isn't quite the same as this fixed unit. So you've really just got to work out which way to BBs works best. And yeah, to 20 meters to the end of my garden, you could probably, I reckon you could hit a man-sized target with those 9 or 10 shots in there. I didn't actually count. So. Yeah, right, let's have a look at the sights. Classic J-frame affair, which means a groove down the top of the slide and a front post, which sits a little bit higher than you really want. So your sight picture ends up looking more like this. I think a lot of people, let's just get a something white for the background here. A lot of people tend to line these up as if they're automatic pistol sights, so like that. That will generally mean that you're going to be shooting low. The sight picture really is more like that, just because that front sight, as you can see here, is that bit higher than the frame. So yeah, the correct lining up is something like that. Now I'm not sure if I really showed you all of the markings properly. I might have left out the ones on the barrel, so let's just have another look over the gun, see if there are any details that I missed. We've got a nice Smith & Wesson logo on the barrel there, which like I said is 2-inch. By the look of the box, it's about 3-inch. You could get with some of the other Model 36s, but the Ladysmith so far is only offered as a 2-inch gun. You can also get the Model 60 Ladysmith, which has a stainless ABS finish. Looks very nice, but I'm not so much into stainless revolvers. I prefer this steel finish. And it really is a gorgeous finish when it catches the light, as it is now. Almost looks liquid. We've got 38, what does it say? 38 Smith & Wesson Special on the barrel there. I think I've got a 38 inert round with me at the moment. So there you go. Show you how tiny the gun is. There's a 38 round there. Reasonably potent, really, I think, for the size of the gun. Very, very small gun. Back strap there. Again, all of it flawlessly finished. Some of the guns that Tanaka used to make would have some areas that were the sort of the lesser seen areas didn't have a great finish on, such as the bottom here, perhaps the inside of the frame, and also the inside of the frame here. Sometimes they didn't even used to put this special finish on. It would just be kind of left plain. But nope, they've covered everywhere of it. It's not quite as well finished in here, but it's not something you see. And overall, the finish is pretty much flawless. I really can't fault it. Yeah, very good. Now, one thing that you do kind of lose with this gun over perhaps one of the Jupiter finish guns is the weight. It's not a particularly heavy gun. Unfortunately, my scales are broken, but if I remember right, it was around the between 300 and 400 gram mark. I think it was about 400 grams. If you went with one of the Jupiter finish Model 36s, if you managed to find one of those, you get a few more grams, perhaps 50 grams, because they have a heavyweight frame. But really, the extra cost you pay over these, you can't get them very easily in the UK, but when you get a Jupiter finish gun, they're around the £300 mark. This was, like you saw on the box, £200. And the discrepancy between the prices in Japan is even more. The difference in the prices is actually greater. So I think for most people, especially with a gun this small, where the extra weight you don't really notice, the steel finish is actually quite a good value compared to those Jupiter finishes, which don't really add enough weight to justify the cost, really. On some of the bigger guns, I would definitely go for the Jupiter finish, but this finish is so excellent, and the gun does feel so good in the hand with those metal parts that I think for an Airsoft collector, £200 really isn't that bad for something like this, despite I'm sure a lot of people thinking that they could get a new TM gas pistol and a few mags for the same price. For a collector, I really can't fault it. There's very little Very little I can think of that I don't like, and most of the stuff that I don't like is just due to the original design. These aren't the most friendly guns to shoot in the way that it forces your hand up like that. Can actually get a little bit of hammer pinch just because those funny grips force you to hold the gun so high up. But the fact that it does come with wood grips is very nice, and you can always swap them out for other ones if you choose. So, slightly messy review here. I feel like I've just been blabbering on for quite a while about lots of different things. Hopefully I've covered everything you might want to know about this gun. If there is anything else, please leave a comment, and there's definitely going to be more videos on the way, so thank you for watching.